Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set.
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle. Once again, it is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond. Listening to us on fantastic radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. And boy, what a treat we've got today. Former Clemson Tiger basketball player Jordan Roper joins us today. He is a big part of IPTAY up at Clemson, the assistant director of IPTAY when it comes down to major gifts in the Block C Club. Jordan, what's up, buddy? How you been? Welcome in.
I'm doing well. Blessed to be where I am. Blessed to be alive. How are you?
Man, I'm doing really good. And I know our fans are excited to hear from you today, and our listeners certainly. Simply because I want to talk to you about the initiative that I don't know if the technical term would be that you spearheaded or that you were just sort of in the brain trust of making this move, but the decision to put in more jerseys from former Clemson Tiger players into the rafters of Littlejohn Coliseum. I know Trevor Booker tonight's going to be honored as Clemson takes on Duke. But then also against North Carolina the other day, we had Greg Buckner there in attendance at Littlejohn Coliseum. So give us some insight into what went into bringing this all together.
Yeah, being a former player, obviously I have the perspective of being a student athlete playing and honestly traveling to other arenas and being able to, look up in the rafters and you can kind of begin to tell the story of their basketball programs on their men and their women's side. And believe it or not, Clemson was one of the few institutions in the ACC that actually did not have jerseys hanging in their rafters. Now, we had student athletes jerseys that were retired, Barbara Kennedy Dixon, Tree Rollins, Banks McFadden, Dale Davis, but we didn't have any current student athletes of recent past that had great careers that we were honoring. And I felt that, as an athletic department, as IPTAY and as Block C, the Block C Club, which is focused on engaging our former student athletes, that, one of the great ways to engage these former athletes and their families is to show them some love, is to recognize them and thank them for the great moments that they gave to the institution. So, myself, I don't want to take credit for myself, but there's a collective of individuals, in the athletic department that came together, came up with a criteria, and credit to everyone. We got it done, and I think it's a great project so far.
Again, Jordan Roper joining us here on the program, and so from that standpoint, you mentioned the small number of players who previously had their jerseys retired versus jerseys in the rafters to recognize their historical significance. So what is the difference in your mind, or is this now just all one big conglomerate on that front?
Well, in my mind, I think this is just a tribute and honoring of, our great student athletes or great athletes that come through the Clemson program on our men and women's side. Just a celebration, it's kind of, I like to look at it threefold. Obviously, it's for the fans and donors and spectators. It tells the story of Clemson basketball and the history that's taken place in Littlejohn Coliseum. But for our current student athletes, it's almost like a North Star, if you will, of something that they can aspire to achieve, aspire to obtain, and work towards. I mean, as a former basketball player, I can tell you that, there's no greater honor than having your jersey hung in the rafters. I mean, that's almost kind of a phrase of it's almost like the GOAT. It's one of those things that you strive towards. But specifically for our prospective student athletes and recruits, when you walk into Littlejohn from our actual will call area, on the concourse, one of the first things you'll see from that eye level area are the jerseys hanging in the rafters. And, I thought that was important, right in line with our donors and spectators of seeing the story, seeing the importance of the individuals and the collective that played a part in what is Clemson basketball and Little John today.
Again, Jordan Roper with us here on a Thursday afternoon on Clemson Sports Talk. He is the assistant director of IPTAY for Major Gifts and also the Block C Club. And so from that standpoint, Jordan, what has been the reception for the players that you guys have had coming in? I know that people were excited to see Greg Buckner a couple of days ago. I know tonight they'll be jacked up for Trevor Booker. I mean, what has that been like for you to be down there on the court and to witness the reception that these guys have gotten?
Oh, well, it's rewarding for me personally because I'm able to connect with the former athletes and their families and get them out in midcourt, and then for them just to kind of get their flowers while they're still here, if you will, kind of a standing ovation. You really get to see the appreciation from the Clemson family. Once they recognize and kind of read off their accomplishments. And, after, there's people that'll come over and sign, ask for autographs or photos and kind of tell their favorite moments of when those athletes were there. And it's great to, connect the history with the present. One of my favorite stories, two stories, are Janet Knight. She's an educator down in Georgia, female student athlete. She brought every female student athlete from her school to the game to watch her be honored, which I thought that was super impactful for those young women to see, the importance of sports, but also the recognition that can come with it. And then Sharon Wright. I mean, we had Sharon Wright. He lives out in Arizona now, and he's been through a bout of adversity, health-wise and just family-wise. And he was able to get here, and he chose that January 15th game because it was his mother's birthday, and this was kind of something that they had both discussed prior to him coming to Clemson. Was one day, his jersey would be hanging in the rafters and he'd be celebrated appropriately. So, just moments like that where you're able to be kind of a fly on the wall, just close to the actual moment is very special, and it speaks to the Clemson family.
Jordan Roper with us here on Clemson Sports Talk again, talking about the former basketball student athletes being honored at Little John Coliseum this season. And I think it is important you noted that it's not just the men, it's also the women's team, ladies like Atora Umo Coleman, who also coached at Clemson but was a star during her time there. Amy Guerin, the long-range shooter from Tennessee. I feel a little old, though, because I was in school with them. Like when people you're in school with are getting in the Rafters, Jordan, that might say something about how old I am.
that just shows you're aging like fine wine, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. All right, so let's talk about the process moving forward. I mean, listen, you know the names, Horace Grant. We mentioned Dale Davis and Trevor Booker and Eldon Campbell and others, but I mean, how does this process move forward in your eyes?
Oh, well, I hope it's something that we can continue to do, even if it's not a student athlete that jersey is actually hung in the rafters, but the importance of recognition for the Block C Club and Clemson athletics as a whole is something that we want to definitely duplicate, across our men's and women's programs here, just as an act of engagement, an act to keep the student athletes connected to the actual institution, but foster relationships in a way that may spur some philanthropy, may spur some networking opportunities for our current student athletes, or who knows? I mean, it can turn into a lot of things. I think the possibilities are endless, but it's definitely an effort to bring the student athletes back into the fold and within the network of the Clemson University fold.
Again, Jordan Roper joining us here on Clemson Sports Talk, taking a look at some of these names. You mentioned the fact of some of the stories. Being a guy growing up, right? Who were and look, I know you played at Clemson, but was that a team that you followed, and were any of the names that you've had a chance to talk to or bring up, were those guys that you sort of looked up to when you were a kid as they played?
Yeah, well, I won't give away my age, and I won't call any of these honorees old. per se. But, to answer your question, no. But obviously, I recognize some of these names, and then obviously they speak to some of their teammates. So, like, for example, Chris Whitney was, he's really close with Sharon Wright. And, I had his trading card when I was younger,
There you go.
Larry Nance, who is first slam dunk champion in NBA. We're working on getting him back, and, his son's been in some of the recent trade talks. So, but it's awesome to just have a reason to connect back with these student athletes. Not just ask them for money, or not just ask them to hey, help us out with this or anything. Just saying, hey, we want to recognize you and celebrate you and bring you back to campus and really bring you back into the fold of everything that's going on in Clemson, because it's a great time to be a Tiger, and we've got a lot of exciting things going on campus.
There's no doubt about that. And again, Jordan Roper joining us here on the program today to talk about this initiative to go ahead and get more players up in the Rafters. And I think, too, Jordan, how big of a recruiting tool can something like this be in your mind's eye versus prior to Clemson not having a ton of these jerseys up there versus a kid that goes to Cameron Indoor or goes to the Dean Dome and sees all of those jerseys up in the Rafters? I mean, how big of a recruiting benefit could something like this bring in your eyes?
I think it'd be a huge benefit, and I think it will be. I suspect that a lot of schools probably, even in the ACC, claim that Clemson probably doesn't care about basketball. It's a football school, and I think this speaks to Clemson as an athletic department, IPTAY, Block C, once again, showing that basketball matters at Clemson University, and we celebrate our legend. And speaking to recruiting, I mean, I want to hang more of these. We want to have, and we're going to have more of these in the Rafters. But this speaks to kind of the aspiration, of what you could become as a Clemson basketball player. I mean, Horace Grant. I mean, this is a guy that played with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, won multiple NBA championships. Eldon Campbell. I mean, we've got Booker back tonight. I mean, these are individuals. Barbara Kennedy Dixon. I mean, that's someone, personally, that I admire myself. But these are individuals that have gone on beyond Clemson University and gone on to do great things, contributing members of society. So just speaking with the game of basketball, I mean, this is as good as it gets here at Clemson, and we recognize that here. We recognize that. And there's a criteria, we're not just throwing up anybody that does anything, kind of like some schools. But I think this is a good initiative to get some players to current players and future players to dream, if you will.
Jordan Roper joining us here on the program today. And again, tonight, Clemson will take on the Duke Blue Devils, and Trevor Booker will be honored. And Booker had some spectacular moments during his career against Duke. I have not been able to attend one of these celebrations this year, but I mean, Jordan, is there a video montage that you guys put together as well for any fans that are in attendance to kind of see those guys in action?
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of got a standard video that we play for both the men and women, but throughout the game, we definitely show those memorable moments. You talk about Greg Buckner being back. I mean, I told him, I was like, listen, there's really just one video you need to play. We're playing North Carolina. We've got Greg Buckner here. I mean, people will know who's here once we play that video. So, but the athletic department's done a great job coming up with, they do a great job with digital content. So it's been awesome so far. And like I said, the fans, they appreciate it. The former athletes and their family appreciate it. It's just it's an overall love fest. It's awesome. It's awesome to be a part of.
Let me tell you, I was in my dorm the night that Buckner jammed on North Carolina to win that game. And you would have thought, I'm telling you, Jordan, you would have thought Clemson won the football national title. I mean, people poured out into the streets. There may or may not have been dumpsters that were lit on fire on campus. It was ridiculous. And that's the thing. I think some of these guys, whether or not you're a, quote, huge Clemson basketball fan or have really ever followed it, these guys that are being recognized today have those types of indelible moments that are just etched in your mind's eye forever.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about. I mean, you see some of these names and you remember your favorite moment. You remember where you were. where you were living on campus, if you were a Clemson student. You know, it's a nostalgia feel, but it tells the story of Clemson basketball through history, you know? And, I mean, yeah, Greg Buckner, I mean, you know, what's funny is, you know, Terrell McIntyre's on staff now, and you know, he makes the pass to Big O. And, you know, hearing the story of, you know, what maybe, you know, the coach was thinking and what T-Mac and then what Buck was thinking, it's awesome to be close to that and hear those stories. But definitely, you know, historical moments in the program's history.
Yeah, Terrell McIntyre didn't do exactly what you want him to do, right? Never leave your feet without a plan, especially when you got a bigger guy on you. But he makes the pass, and then all of a sudden, Harold Jameson with the dump inside, and Buckner jams on Antoine Jameson, and the Tigers win at the ACC tournament. That was a moment I will never forget. Again, Jordan Roper joining us here today to celebrate the Clemson Tiger men's basketball team and women's basketball team with the banners that they're putting up in Littlejohn Coliseum. But Jordan, more specifically, talk to us a little bit about your role with IPTAY and Major Gifts, and you know what our listeners can do to help you guys out on that front.
Yeah, so my role with IPTAY is assistant director of IPTAY Major Gifts and working with the Block C Club. As I said, kind of that's our former student athlete engagement program. But you know, IPTAY is comprised of over 18,000 members. We've got some of the best fans, best donors in the country, and that's really they're the investors. They're the result of what you see on and off the field of the student athletes going on to go pro in professional sports. I mean, we got a number of guys in the Super Bowl, and then you know beyond the field. I mean, you know, to produce a guy like Darian Rencher or you know, there's a number of student athletes that come out of this athletic program, but it's all supported by IPTAY donors. So anything from scholarships to facilities to nutrition, strength and conditioning, academic support, IPTAY supports. Right now, we've got an initiative for women's leadership and women's sports. We're adding 2 more sports to the athletic department, part of Title IX equity efforts. We got gymnastics and women's lacrosse. And we're raising dollars for that from a facility standpoint and a scholarship standpoint. So if anyone's listening and wants to be a part of that, obviously reach out to me, reach out to anyone on our staff, and we can begin that conversation. But you know, IPTAY and my role with that it's been awesome so far. Obviously, it's almost like paying it forward in a way. You know, I was a former student athlete, men's basketball player, 2012 to 2016. So I'm a benefactor of IPTAY and you know, unbelievably grateful for that. So it's cool to be a part of that process and pay it forward in that regard. But IPTAY is one of the best organizations in the country, you know, supporting some of the best student athletes in the country. So it's awesome, man. It's awesome. Like I said, I'm blessed to be alive, man.
Jordan, final thing on the IPTAY front. I know your new boss, Graham Neff, there at the athletic department. I'm assuming he's at the top of the IPTAY food chain as well, ultimately. But mention the Clemson Plus package that they're putting together. Your thoughts on that real quick? We got about a minute and a half.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. Awesome benefit to being an IPTAY member. So if you are an IPTAY member, you will have access to the Clemson Plus platform, and it'll be a kind of an inside look on, you know, some of the people behind the scenes that help the athletic department run, but also some behind the scenes with our student athletes and the journeys that they've been on. I understand that there may be something that's coming out on our men's soccer team's run to the national championship. So, you know, it'll be content like that, exclusive interviews, different kind of medium, if you will, that we don't have to rely on Disney to create for us. Kind of Clemson will take it into its own hand, and you'll really get to see the personalities and the people behind Clemson athletics. I think it'll be really cool, really cool.
Well, tell those guys if they need a voice, maybe not a face, but a voice, I'll be happy to help out.
I'll definitely let them know. We probably can't afford you, though. That's
oh, man. Appreciate it, Jordan. Always great to catch up with you. And again, if you guys want to get up with Jordan, you can check him out over on the IPTAY website as well. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Go Tigers.
With a quick break here on the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. How fun is that? And again, tonight, Clemson taking on the Duke Blue Devils. I don't know why. I kept thinking at some point, did I say it backwards? North Carolina the other night, a loss, 79-77. Tonight, they'll take on the Duke Blue Devils at 8 o'clock. 803-450-0086. And Big Trevor Trevor Booker will be in the house. We'll hit a break. We'll come back with more of the show that shakes the Southland right after this. Back at it on a Thursday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland. Thank you to Jordan Roper for joining us there in the top of the hour, kicking off the show. Coming up at hour number 2, legendary Clemson SID Tim Bray joins the program. A great story up on the website right now about how his family support helped Chase Hunter stay the course in Tiger Town. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. Head over there and check it out on our website. Put the .com on it. Doggone it. ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Now, as for tonight's matchup, Clemson, of course, taking on the Duke Blue Devils. This is the last trip to Little John Coliseum for one Mike Krzyzewski. And, you know, for years there have been some really, really good performances for Clemson against the Duke Blue Devils. And I can tell you that there was probably no more exciting rival during my time at Clemson than when Duke rolled in, even more so than North Carolina, because the Blue Devils were, quite frankly, recruiting at just an elite and different level than most teams. And, I mean, you saw names I mentioned here on the program the other day. Carlos Boozer, Elton Brand. I mean, you go through the list, and some of you who are a little bit older than even I am. I mean, you had Leitner and Hurley and Grant Hill. I mean, it was just every time you turned around, it's a former McDonald's All-American, a number 1, number 2, number 5 draft pick. I mean, it was going to be a absolute monster rolling into the building. But yet, in this series, even though Clemson trails by a considerable amount, 32 wins to 111 losses, at Clemson, Clemson has 24 victories. And they've only lost 39 times to Duke at home. So the fact that in Little John, or, quote, at Clemson, this series is just a 15-game spread is pretty remarkable, given the fact that, in Durham, the Blue Devils have won 63 and only lost 4 times to the Tigers. Duke currently riding a 2-game winning streak in the series, and Brad Brownell 3-11 all-time against the Duke Blue Devils. The game will be televised on the ACC network at 8 o'clock tonight. Tim Bray, who joins us, will also be on the radio call alongside Don Munson. P.J. Hall, one of the most improved players in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Coach K had some kind words for PJ the last time these teams faced off. Hall is up 11.8 points per game, up 4 rebounds per game this season, and up 1.6 assists and a block. I mean, that young man has really reshaped his game, and the additional minutes and certainly the work that he got and the opportunity that he got to play behind Amir Sims clearly paying off. We heard Brad Brownell talking about that yesterday, or actually that was following Clemson's loss to North Carolina. But the fact remains, Hall, 15.3 points, 6 rebounds, and 1.7 assists per game. And really not getting as many minutes as you would like because of some of the foul difficulty that he has had at times. I mean, I know that being a big man, he's got to have some rest. I don't think he's going to be a guy that plays every single minute of every game. But I think you would like to see his playing time, given the fact that he's the best player on the team. I think you'd really like to see his playing time stretch up maybe another minute, maybe another 2 minutes or so if possible. But it just hadn't worked out because he has found himself in foul trouble from time to time. Now, going up against the Duke Blue Devils, one of the other things is I think is really good for P.J. Hall is the matchup that he will face with Paulo Banchero, who is probably going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. Banchero, the 19-year-old, 6'10", 250-pound forward out of Seattle, Washington. I think just from the standpoint of getting in some work against a next-level guy, I mean, that's a big deal. And Banchero, just a freshman, but a skilled basketball player and most likely, again, a one-and-done prospect as a five-star power forward out of O'Day High School. So with that on the table and in the blocks coming up tonight, it will be, I think, for anybody who, appreciates the job that PJ Hall has done this year. I think this is the type of matchup that you'd like to see Hall have a nice performance against, whether it's defensively playing well against Banchero, who currently averages 17.2 points per ball game, along with 8.4 rebounds, and does a really good job in the paint. Banchero is also skilled enough to shoot the ball from the perimeter, shoots it at nearly 33% from deep. But really where you want to see, I think, the most work out of PJ Hall tonight is what he does defensively. How does he play defensively in this matchup against one of the best big men maybe in college basketball in 2022, and certainly one of the top prospects for the NBA draft. Taking a look at some of those way too early draft projections, Chet Holmgren, the center from Gonzaga, the freshman 7-footer who can do just about everything on the court, projected as the number 1 pick. Jabari Smith from Auburn, the power forward freshman, expected to be the 2nd pick. And then Paulo Banchero, expected to be the 3rd overall pick in the NBA draft coming up this season. Speaking of the NBA, a huge trade took place today. We'll tell you about it when we get back on the show that shakes the Southland. Well, some moves were made in the NBA today as the trade deadline passed at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and not necessarily a shocking move per se because of the relationship I think that Ben Simmons has with his Philadelphia teammates and the way that city feels about Ben Simmons at this point. But the fact that the trade ended up being James Harden from the Brooklyn Nets to the Philadelphia 76ers, to me, probably the most surprising thing simply, and I know there have been some rumors about it potentially taking place, but most of the time you just don't see a team in the same conference who are close in the standings trading a big guy, a big name like this. Like Brooklyn, in some respects, it feels like, and again, they've got some other pieces that are coming in to the deal outside of just getting Ben Simmons. But the Brooklyn Nets just weaponized to a degree the Philadelphia 76ers even more in my eyes. Now, the other names that were involved in the rumored trade that will take place or is expected to take place include Paul Millsap, who will go with Harden from the Nets to the Sixers, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round draft picks will go to Brooklyn from Philadelphia. Brooklyn will receive Philadelphia's unprotected 2022 first-round pick with the right to defer it to 2023, as well as a top 8 protected 2027 first-round pick. The deal will allow both teams to move on from unhappy superstars who have been seeking trades. But again, man, it just feels like this, for me, in the short term, is a huge win for the 76ers. Huge win for the 76ers. It also begs the question about just the issues with the Nets and Durant and James Harden and Kyrie Irving and the fact, I was beating up on my Los Angeles Lakers the other day, hammering my Lakers for the inability to win at the highest level with the triumvirate of stars that they have. And I just, because I'm not a New Jersey Nets guy or don't really care about the Nets, I didn't even harp on some of the issues that group has had. And again, that was not the only big deal that went down today. Damian Lillard, he's still going to be with Portland, but his partner in crime, CJ McCollum's gone. McCollum was traded to the New Orleans Pelicans to pair up with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. The Sacramento Kings acquired Domantas Sabonis, the 25-year-old All-Star, Jeremy Lamb and Justin Holiday from the Pacers for Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. And again, there were other moves, including the Dallas Mavericks trading Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis going to be traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Washington Wizards for Spencer Dinwiddie. In the final big name or trade that took place today was the Milwaukee Bucks acquiring Serge Ibaka from the Los Angeles Clippers as a part of a 4-team trade that sent Marvin Bagley, the former number 2 pick from the Kings, to the Detroit Pistons. So Marvin Bagley, who was drafted by the Kings a couple of years ago, now heads to Detroit to play, and the Bucks get just a sort of a bruiser, if you will, when it comes down to Serge Ibaka, who's getting up there in years, but still gives great effort. And just looking over some of Marvin Bagley's numbers during his time at Sacramento, given what he did collegiately at Duke, and then sort of looking at his numbers 4 years into the league as the second overall selection, 9.3 points, 7.2 rebounds. I mean, it's well-rounded, but it's nowhere near what you would expect if you go out and get a guy who's the second pick in the NBA draft. Believe me, you expect a lot more than that. And looking at the way he played collegiately, he was an absolute monster. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the stats that Marvin Bagley put up, but he was just a stud for the Blue Devils. Instead, in the NBA, looking a little like a fish out of water. 803-450-0086. I know, fish out of water, Swanny. We don't like when you talk about the NBA. Apologize. Again, thank you to Jordan Roper. In the opening segment, we talked about some former NBA players who are getting put up in the rafters at Little John Coliseum. I think it's a great move for the recruiting standpoint. I mean, if you think about Duke and North Carolina and the programs with all those banners in the rafters and what it means, and look, what, like, do you have to have some sort of Hall of Fame numbers at Clemson to be put in the rafters? No, but you need to have somebody up there. I mean, and like Jordan said before, it's what, Dale Davis, Horace Grant, Banks McFadden, and Barbara Kennedy Dixon. Yeah, you needed more, and now they've got more. And I think it's great for both the men and women's basketball programs. 803-450-0086 coming up in just a few minutes. Legendary Clemson SID Tim Beret joins the program. You know, we'll get his thoughts on some of those guys who are in the rafters in Little John Coliseum, plus this historic 3-game stretch over 5 days, I guess, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 5-game stretch as the Tigers take on 3 of the top 8 teams in the history of college basketball when it comes down to wins. So we'll talk with Tim Beret about that coming up in just a little bit. 803-450-0086. That is the text line. That is the phone line. And you can leave us a message. Coming up, we'll hear from Double O, who gave us a call just a little bit ago here on the show that shakes the Southland. We'll hit a quick break. We'll bounce back with more Clemson Sports Talk on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Also available on the iHeartRadio app and on your Amazon Echo and Google Home devices. Final segment of hour number one, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan. We've got a couple of messages coming in via the text line and the phone line. And speaking of the phone line, it's not O-line. No. I know O-line texted us not long ago. Always appreciated him peeking over the fence and hanging out with us. But on the line, it's Double O, if you will, from a location unbeknownst to us. Double O, what's going on, big guy? Hope you're doing well. Welcome into the show, man.
Yeah, I'm still in a deep, dark cave. I can't give you a location. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you my name either. You should know by now. Brad Brunell, let's give him some more money. He needs some more money. We need to give him a contract extension. Just hire him. Let's give him one of them contracts that lasts forever and pay him about $25 trillion. We need him bad.
25 trillion.
Okay, what's next? The Olympics? Not interested. All right, here. Super Bowl, I already told you the Bengals. What else you need to know?
A lot of
and next time you use double O when you're pronouncing your name, your telephone number to leave a message, I got a patent on that double O. So every time you ring it, every time you use, instead of saying 450-086, and you say double O, that's a $5 charge every time you use double O's name and your telephone number. You have a nice day. Go, Tigers!
Double O here on the show that shakes the Southland. 803-450-0086. Did I do okay there? 803-450-0086. Bobby, listening to the program in New Jersey, says, Swanny, the opposite of love is not hate. It's apathy. He said, I want to love Clemson basketball, but I find myself being apathetic about it, waiting for baseball and football to start and skipping right over basketball season. That's Bobby listening to us in New Jersey. I am 100% with you, Bobby, in so many respects, because I think, and I mentioned this yesterday, apathy is one of the things that I think has hit a lot of Clemson Tiger fans when it comes down to basketball. And I also believe, Bobby, to be honest with you, that sort of builds the issue that I've brought up here for a couple of weeks now, right? Like, that's the thing that drives people from sticking around. It's the apathy. And some will be apathetic for a season, and then the next year they'll get excited and they'll come back, and some just won't. They'll say, I'm not coming back till there's finally a change at the top. And that's scary, I think, for the program. Because and I've told you this, if you talk to people that play the game, they'll tell you Brad Brownell has a great mind for the game. The problem that I see in terms of Brad Brownell is not necessarily an X's and O's thing. It's a Jimmy and Joe's thing. And it's the fact that, yeah, I get it. Hunter Tyson's injured. That's probably a big part of the reason Clemson wasn't able to overcome North Carolina a couple of nights ago. But in fairness, it's been this team that's existed in a large part and had a large part of success because of the transfer portal and not who you've gotten out of high school. And I don't know how you fix a scenario where you're at a program that has historically not done a lot. And maybe this is part of why Jordan Roper's spearheading this whole deal to get these names in the banners, or these banners in the rafters, because that might actually help with recruiting. And I think you could hear when I asked Jordan Roper that question earlier, sort of the excitement that brought to the possibility, right? Like the possibility that rafters with names and jerseys could improve recruiting whether it's Brad Brownell or any Johnny come lately as the head coach, I think it's significant. And players, more than you, the fan, more than me, a radio show host, more than anybody, the former players want to see that program reach the top of the mountain. Because let me tell you, when I'm sitting in a room with Robert Carswell and we're talking about Clemson winning a national title in football 2016. And look, Clemson had a title in 81. But Carswell's blood, sweat, and tears are poured onto that field in the 1990s. Yes, he's carrying on a tradition, but his blood, sweat, and tears aren't poured in until 1990. And so to bear the fruit of that labor for him did not happen until 2016. That's when he could really feel it. Like when you've put in and the championships in the past, it's not the same as when you've put in and you feel like your legacy, the fruits of your labor are now being reaped and benefited. And you're benefiting from it. And I mean that was the thing when I asked him that question about that moment. He was just so thankful that the team had finally achieved the goal that he had tried to reach, but Clemson was unable to do so during his tenure. And that, I think, is what guys like Jordan Roper and guys like Trevor Booker, who are back tonight, ultimately want to see. They don't have to see Clemson win 25 national titles in basketball, but they want to see the program elevate itself to a perennial Sweet 16 team, a team that makes an occasional run to the Final Four, and maybe, just maybe one day, kicks in the door of a national title. And if there's been a time in the history of the Atlantic Coast Conference that there's been a chance, wouldn't it be when there's not a Dean Smith or a Roy Williams at North Carolina and there's not a Coach K at Duke, and it just kind of feels like it's wide open? Yeah. And so how do you get there? Well, again, whether it's Brad Brownell or whoever, you got to get recruits. And this, I think, will certainly help with recruits. Hour 2, Tim Beret joins us. Stay with us.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set. Just call me Swanny.
Tigers time. Tigers time.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan with you on a Thursday afternoon. Had to think about it for a minute. Tim Beret joins us. We talked with Jordan Roper earlier. And Tim, thank you for being a part of the program. I got to ask you, we were talking with Jordan about Clemson putting these former players, both men and women's jerseys, in the Rafters in Little John Coliseum. I mean, what have been your thoughts, or what has been your thoughts about this as Clemson's move forward with it and getting pretty much each home game an opportunity to honor one of these former stars?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun for me because I was SID when all these guys were playing. Sharon Wright, been close with him for over 25 years, near 30 years. And so it was great to see him when he came back. I got to see Greg Buckner Tuesday night, and I guess we're going to see Trevor Booker tonight.
Yeah, and, I think, too, one of the things that Jordan and I were talking about is if you go around the Atlantic Coast Conference, a lot of these arenas will have a ton of banners in, the upper part of the stadium. And Clemson really has only had a handful, right? What was it, 4, I think, prior to this in terms of jerseys that were retired?
Yeah, previously, you had to be in the Ring of Honor to get your jersey. hung up, and it's pretty tough to get in the Ring of Honor. So these guys who have their jerseys up are not in the Ring of Honor, although Dale Davis is in the Ring of Honor, and Tree Rollins and Banks McFadden are in the Ring of Honor, and they have a nice display in the concourse around it. But I mean, I know it helps in recruiting. Guys look up to those players whose banners are hung up there. So I thought it was a very good idea.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think recruiting could ultimately be one of the biggest benefits of it when you walk into an arena and, maybe you don't have the hardware of Final Four appearances and national championships, but to show, hey, look at the guys that once played here. Again, legendary Clemson SID, Tim Beret, joining us here on the program today. And Tim, not only is it the men's, but also the women's basketball players, Amy Guerin, Atora Umo, two female student athletes who played when I was at Clemson. And I'm not lying to you, it does make me feel a little bit old, though, Tim, when I look up there and I see people that I went to school with.
Yeah, they played from 95 to 99 and put in 2 ACC championship teams, teams that were outstanding in the NCAA tournament. I remember Amy was quite the outside shooter, and Atura was, probably the best point guard we ever had.
Yeah, a lot of fun watching those teams. And Jim Davis, of course, the head coach, or certainly he's still in the area. And I know that just a guy whose name is really etched on that Clemson women's program. And for you, flipping back to the men's side for a minute, who are some of those players that, have been brought in already this year? You mentioned Trevor Booker tonight. I know Greg Buckner just a couple of nights ago against North Carolina, but some of those moments that you recall from their time in Tiger Town.
Yeah, well, of course, actually starting tonight, interesting that we're playing Duke, and one of the greatest dunks I remember was Trevor had a dunk his junior year against, it beat Duke 74-47 in 2009, I believe it was. And at the time, it was the worst margin of defeat for Duke since the 1990 NCAA Finals when UNLV beat them by about 30 to win the national championship. But he had a dunk over Kyle Singler that was pretty amazing. And, we went on to a big victory that night. But there were so many, great games that he'd had. I remember there was a double overtime win against Florida State that he made a key three-pointer. He didn't make a lot of threes in his career or even attempt a lot, but he made one down the stretch, and then Terrence Oglesby went crazy in the overtimes. I think he scored 12 points in the overtime periods, and we won that night. And of course, Blossingame came back and was honored, and he scored over 1,500 points and had a terrific career, especially his junior year. And Sharon Wright had 2 triple doubles in his career, the last Clemson player to have a triple double in a game, and that was way back in the 1992-93 season against Maryland. That was the first televised triple double, by the way, when he had a triple double against the University of Maryland. So I'm not exactly sure the schedule past tonight. I don't know if anybody's going to be honored Saturday or not. Did Jordan indicate?
He didn't mention it, but I wanted to flash back. The first triple double aired on television in ACC history or Clemson history?
Pretty sure it was a game against Maryland.
Wow.
And there were other triple doubles prior to that. Tree had 2, but neither one of those games were televised, and there were some others, but as I remember, I remember looking it up and going through the ACC office with Brian Morrison, and it was the first televised triple double. It was on the ACC network, not an ACC network like we have today, but it was over the air stations that broadcast.
And that, my friends, is why we have Tim Bray on the program every week to bring you knowledge like that. Okay, so Tim, for me, I think it's funny too. Like, say, take Greg Buckner for instance. Lots of great ball games, but a moment like his slam against North Carolina in the ACC tournament, the first time Clemson beat North Carolina in that state, there are, and then of course the legendary call of Jim Phillips, Buckner jams. Like, I mean, even those moments just stick in your memory so well that I think it's great when fans maybe of yesteryear get to relive it, and then fans who maybe don't know as much about it get to learn about it.
Yeah, great point. That's another positive of this program that Jordan came up with when we introduced Greg on the Tuesday night. They showed that with the highlight with the play-by-play from Jim, and I was happy to be alongside him when he did that. But I didn't say anything. I let him go and give the whole description. But somebody asked me if that was the greatest play in Clemson history. Certainly probably the most memorable on a lot of fronts. And the main thing I remember is by winning that game, it got us in the NCAA tournament. We were on the bubble. It was the 95-96 season. We were a young team. Started 4 freshmen and Buckner, and but with that win, we beat every other team in the league at least once that year. It's still the only time we've beaten North Carolina in the ACC tournament, that was just a huge play.
One of the other things too, I think you just mentioned the fact that Clemson had beaten everybody else. I saw that. I think you tweeted it out, Tim. Maybe it wasn't you. I don't know. Anytime I see a factoid tweet, I just initially think that was Tim Beret. But Clemson currently.
You either give me credit or blame it on me. Yeah.
Well, Clemson, by virtue of their victory, at North Carolina a couple of years ago, I guess that was at the end of 2018 or early 2019, right before the national championship game against LSU. Clemson has the longest uninterrupted winning streak in Atlantic Coast Conference play in Chapel Hill. Is that right? I know they don't play every year, but was that you that tweeted that out?
Yeah, that was me. On Tuesday made it 1,485 consecutive days that North Carolina had gone without beating Clemson in Chapel Hill. I mean, it was semi-tongue-in-cheek because everybody knows that we lost 59 straight, and I think I let it off saying that it was the note that Bob Bradley never would have imagined would be possible. But then I did look up all of North Carolina's home games against ACC teams since that game was played, which was January the 8th, I think, or 6th or something of 2019.
Yeah.
And they have beaten every other ACC team at home since they beat us in that game. Now, obviously, we've only played them once since then, and there's a couple other teams they haven't played very often. But that is the longest stretch of consecutive days without beating the Tigers, and it's the most among ACC opponents.
Tim Beret with us here on the program each and every Thursday. And as I said when I read that tweet on the air, Tim, I said, look, I get it. But the numbers are the numbers, guys. That's just what it is. So take it for what it's worth. As for Clemson, this stretch of games, North Carolina a couple of nights ago, Duke tonight at 8 o'clock. I know you'll be on the call alongside Don Munson. And then later this weekend, Notre Dame, your alma mater, coming into Little John. You mentioned it also in the tweet. Again, if you don't follow Tim, you should, at Tim Beret on Twitter. It's spectacular. These are 3 of the top 8 teams in terms of wins all time in college basketball, and Clemson's playing them all over a 5-day stretch. And not to mention, they're all really in the upper 5 or so, I guess, right now in the ACC.
Yeah, I can't say it's the toughest because we have had 3 consecutive games at home in which we've played ranked teams, and Duke is the only one that's ranked. But I think I said historically, good programs. And
right.
North Carolina is 3rd in wins. Duke is 4th in wins. And Notre Dame is 8th in wins, which I know surprises a lot of a lot of people, but Notre Dame was really good in the 20s and the 30s, and Moose Krause was the coach in the 40s and the 50s, and they had some really good teams, and they're also in the top 10 in most NCAA tournament season appearances. But anyway, so yeah, it is quite a challenge against historically good programs, and as you said, they're all near the top of the standings in the ACC. So they are good, even if they're not all ranked in the top 20 at the present time.
Well, and that's that was the point I was making too. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I think they were the top 3 teams in the league this year, and I know that Clemson's looking for some key victories. They played well against North Carolina, especially in the second half, scoring 52 points, having a chance there late in the ball game. But this matchup tonight with Banchero, who I really love PJ Hall's game. Banchero is projected to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. I mean, how valuable are these matchups? Even though Banchero is a freshman and Hall's a sophomore, how valuable are the matchups like this, in your opinion, for PJ, just moving forward with his career at Clemson, which I think most people believe will be another 2 seasons?
Yeah, well, this is why, PJ, he's been around here, so he's familiar with the program, but he also, these are the types of games that he wants to play to improve his game. You get better by playing against the really good opponents, and you learn from them. And and he learned from Baycock, and he went head to head with him, and they both scored 24 points in the game. And so that's how you learn, and they are important games for him as he continues to progress. And it's just a shame that Hunter Tyson is hurt. One of the reasons we came so close to beating Duke and Cameron was Hunter had a really good game. I think he had 12 points in the game, but he defended pretty well, and we'll certainly miss him tonight. But we've had we've had a lot of close games this year. Unfortunately, we hadn't done well in the close games. I think we're just 1-6 in games decided by 5 points or less, and that's really the big difference between this year and last year. And you'll see that, with a lot of teams. I mean, Notre Dame basically has the same personnel they had last year, but they lost a lot of close games, and this year they're winning all the close games.
Just a couple of buckets here and there can change things. I look back, honestly, I'll tell you, I know I don't want to throw it back to the game in Atlanta, but there was a play in the ball game where Chase Hunter goes up and slams in. I think it was a PJ Hall lay-in or a shot from PJ that was going to go in, and the place kind of erupted. It was a great play. I think Clemson had 10 points at that time, and then 8 minutes later they still had 10 points. And I thought, man, if that bucket had just gone in, or even late in the game when you're down 4, you're down 2. I mean, it's just one little moment, Tim. One little thing could change it all. All right, final.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, final couple of things for you here. So I know through the years we've talked to you about football games and football moments, and a lot of times you were preoccupied with having to maybe get out of the arena and go deal with the head coach or whatever was going on. But basketball is a little bit more intimate, and a lot of those years you've been right there doing the color commentary alongside whomever the play-by-play guy was during your tenure. What kind of relationship at all do you have with Coach K as he enters his final trip into Little John Coliseum? I mean, because it's a lot more intimate being right there on the sidelines than, an 80,000 seat stadium could be.
Well, it's changed over the years just because, the way things are, even with the travel. It's been that way with, a lot of coaches. But, when I first came to Clemson, things were different. So my first year was 78, 79. Coach K's first year was 80, 81. And, Mr. Bradley had great relationships with everybody in the league and all the other SIDs. And Coach K's first or second year, the night before the game, Mr. Bradley and I took him and their trainer, Max Crowder, and the SID at the time, who I think was Tom Mickle, and we took him out to a fish camp for dinner the night before, before the game. And, you didn't get to know the other, the other people. I know we took Terry Holland once. We took Valvano, out to dinner before the game.
Wow.
They were just different times. My favorite story goes back to before when I started. In the 1960s, Florida State came to Clemson. It was a non-conference game, and it was Coach Kennedy. A guy's name was Coach Kennedy for Florida State. And so he and Press Maravich were good friends. And so the night before the game, they came over to Mr. and Mrs. Bradley's house for dinner. And after dinner, they sat around and listened to Mitch Miller records on the Bradley's
Wow.
recorder. And at that night, they were sitting and talking, and they decided at that dinner that they would do something they'd never done before. Is they sat together at midcourt during the game away from the teams. When there was a timeout, they would go back to the bench, but they actually sat at midcourt in chairs at the other side of the scorer's table and watched the game together.
Unbelievable.
Isn't that amazing stuff? Yeah,
it is. It is. And, to think back too, for me to hear you tell the stories of even the 80s, and because now, like you say, it's so different. I mean, coaches are making so much more money. There's so much more, I don't know if it's protected or whatever you want to call it, but just kind of shielded from the community at large. But to be able to go out to dinner with a Coach K or a Jim Valvano, just that is awesome, Tim. Awesome stuff, man. Thank you so much. Best of luck tonight on the call. I know a lot of our listeners will be tuning in to hear you and Don Munson covering Clemson and Duke. And surprisingly, as lopsided as the series has been historically, the Tigers have played them decently well in Little John Coliseum.
Yeah,
or at least
course
at
we
home.
played them. We played them very well, obviously, in Cameron this year. So we'll see what happens.
Follow him on Twitter at Tim Bray. Tim, we'll talk to you next Thursday. Thank you so much.
Okay, Lawton. Take care.
Longtime Clemson SID Tim Bray here on the program. 803-450-0086. Text line and phone line. Again, you can be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere. We always appreciate hearing from each and every one of you on the show that shakes the Southland as we roll along on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. When we come back, before I dive into some Clemson football conversations, I do want to say one big positive about this Thursday morning, and it was a positive that took place even before 7 a.m. I'll tell you what that positive was for me here on the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, 803-450-0086. With a quick break and come back with more right after this. Back at it on a Thursday. Great conversation there with legendary Clemson SID Tim Bray. Again, I want to point to all right. I want to point you towards our website. There we go. English. Who needs that? I'm never going to England. Family support helped Clemson's Chase Hunter stay the course in Tigertown, written by our very own Tyrese Ingram. Great article over there brought to you by our good friends at Great Southern Homes. Tyrese does a tremendous job, and Chase Hunter's story, phenomenal. Kid who's really turned it on and has been a catalyst. And I think that's the other thing that's it's frustrating right now for me with this Clemson basketball program with Chase Hunter going out. Hunter Tyson going out, is that when we talk about a well-rounded basketball program, a lot of times you're looking at teams and programs that have 2 or 3 players that are capable of not necessarily having to, to put the team on your back and score 25 points. But I do think that there is this thought process, and rightfully so, that in order to cross over into that realm of being a solid basketball team, that you got to have a couple of guys you can really lean on, and it doesn't have to be every night. But if you have a PJ Hall, a Chase Hunter, a Hunter Tyson, a David Collins, and then either Nick Honor or Alamir Dawes adding in, I mean, that is a difficult thing to handle. The more players that you have who can be threats offensively. And so right as you see Chase Hunter beginning to emerge, Hunter Tyson goes down. And that in all honesty, I think is one of the frustrating things for me. Take off the radio show hat and just focus on a guy that was North Floor for life and wants to see much success for the Clemson Tiger basketball program. I just go, really? What would this team look like not last, 2 nights ago against North Carolina or tonight against Duke, but over the next month of the season, if all of a sudden you're beginning to kind of get your groove? And it does take a while to work into that. Like bringing in David Collins, you can immediately see how positive his influence is and was very early in the season. I mean, to me, David Collins stood out. But anytime you've got a new guy, I mean, it's just a whole different ball of wax, for lack of another word. And you're trying to learn to play together. You're trying to play complementary basketball on both the offensive and defensive end of the floor, and also not do too much and not do too little. Like you don't want to be too selfish if you're David Collins and you're brand new, but you also have to be willing to take shots and make shots. And I felt like his transition to being a Clemson Tiger went relatively well from this observer's perspective. But the minute you kind of feel like, okay, they're making some inroads and they've got a little more depth, and Chase Hunter alleviated one of the biggest problems that I harped on this entire offseason, and that was being immensely undersized in the backcourt with Alamir Dawes and Nick Honor. I did not think that was a winning combination at guard over the long haul. But with Chase Hunter emerging, now you got a little bigger guy. And so where Chase Hunter would have previously probably been playing where David Collins is, more of a 3 type player, like the third guard in the lineup, he can now play as the shooting guard off of Alamir or Nick. That makes your lineup a little bit bigger. It allows a guy like David Collins to play as a 3 where he's probably most comfortable, but still take advantage of some of his guard-like skill set from a dribble, drive, penetrate, pass, court vision standpoint. On further down to the point of where you would have had Hunter Tyson at the 4, a natural 4, and then a back to the basket guy who can stretch things out a little bit, kind of a stretch 5 with PJ Hall. And instead, now you're kind of in this weird scenario. You don't have a guy, Naz Bohannon is not as big or nor as talented as Hunter Tyson. Got to figure out what your rotation is going to be. It is good that Ian Shiflin's getting more opportunities. I mean, I think that is, as Brad Brownell said, I think that is a huge positive. The Shiflin's getting more chances with the basketball in his hand now, which should help him down the road. My only concerning factor at this point, and I don't think it's a major concern because PJ Hall is a local product, but you see people out there, and with the transfer portal being what it is, you see people saying, well, PJ Hall might want to pack it up. And that is a disappointing part of being in a program that is lackluster in terms of the returns on the hardwood. PJ Hall, who would have no real reason to leave Clemson per se, can leave Clemson if he wants, and he doesn't have to sit out. Like, I know we typically talk about the transfer portal and the issues that I see with it, and the fact that I would like to figure out a way to make it where players just couldn't leave. And again, we mostly talk about this with football. But, I mean, if PJ Hall wants to be the center at Duke next season, there is nothing keeping him from being able to do that. and he doesn't even have to sit. So he doesn't even have to feel. You don't even have to have that attachment to your program. You're just gone and you're somewhere new. And I hate that about the sport. I'm not saying he's leaving. I'm just making the point that that's one of the things I dislike about college sports and the transfer portal right now. That's just a frustrating thing. We'll hit a break. Stay with us. One of the things in radio, by the way, Clemson Sports Talk, thanks for hanging out with us, that you're supposed to do in radio is pay it off. And I didn't. I apologize. I didn't tell you the great thing about today prior to 7 a.m., but I remembered it during the break. And so let me just say this. When I walked outside, now many of you know this, I have another job. You go, what? You mean you just don't talk on the radio for a living? Man, I wish that was the case. I mean, if I could make the kind of money that some of these guys do in radio, and I guess technically I could. If you want to be a supporter of the program, you can always hit me up, 803-450-0086. We'll bring you on board. That'll help keep it going. The other thing you could do, subscribe to our website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com, just $63.17 to support us. I mean, I imagine kind of a crazy thought, but a day where there's 1,000 people who subscribe to the website, you go, well, that is a lot of money in a hurry, isn't it, Swanny? I go, yeah, it really is. That would be amazing. Then I could probably just be this every day and run the website as well. Probably run the website even better, quite frankly. No, not even probably, absolutely run the website even better and have more high-quality content and exclusive interviews for you. So, again, if you want to help us take a step that direction, $63.17 gets you 1 year of premium subscription to ClemsonSportsTalk.com. But you know what made me happy? I am out early. Like, I can remember Teddy Hefner used to have his show on our station from 6 to 9 a.m. He's now 9 to noon. But he was 6 to 9 years ago when I first started here. And he and Dr. Rick Sanford, former South Carolina football player, would be on. And I would rib Dr. Rick inadvertently. So when I gave the rundown of the lineup of shows here, speaking of rundown, check out Rob Sanders from 3 until 4 o'clock every day. When I gave the rundown, I don't know if I've ever told this story on the air. If I have, stop me. Like you could. Like, what are we going to do? We'll text him. You can if you want, but I'm gonna probably finish it up before I notice your text anyway. But Dr. Rick and Teddy would be on, and Teddy gives the rundown. He does a great job of that, telling you what's coming up for the day. And back then, there were a host of shows that were on. And so I would say, don't forget about our 14 hours of local. We were live and local for 14 hours. I was on from 6 to 8 then at night. So we would go from 6 in the morning to 8 at night, 14 hours. And so I'd give the lineup. I'd say, talking sports with Teddy Hefner, moving on into whatever the other show was called, the Press Box or whatever. I'm going through the list of shows. And Dr. Rick would hear that. Dr. Rick, by the way, a great guy. Gamecock, yes, but great guy. Lots of fun talking with Rick through the years, to be honest with you. Sports knowledge, something else. But I would never say his name. And I can remember riding to work. They didn't think I was listening. They thought, well, the guy that does the 8 o'clock show has to be asleep at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. But instead, I'd be going to my day job at the school. And so I'd hear Rick. They would think I would not hear this, but I would hear it. Rick would say something along the lines of, Teddy, I can't believe he doesn't say my name. Lawton, say my name. Say my name. I mean, he said that a couple of times. A couple of times I heard him say that. And so then once I knew that was kind of under his skin a little bit, it was just all in fun. I would start saying, tune in the morning to Teddy Hefner and another guy or some other guy. I would take it one step further. I would say some guy that played football at South Carolina and Teddy Hefner. And man, I could tell every time he heard it because I'd go listen to their show on my way to work and he'd be a little bit more jazzed up. But what was I excited about? That's the payoff. I still have it 4.5 minutes in. What's the payoff? Dude, this morning I walk out to the car And yeah, there was frost on it. I thought I was late for work. Because it was so bright outside. 2 days ago when I walked outside to go to work at 6:45 in the morning, it was still dark. And today when I walk out at 6:45 in the morning, I looked at my watch. I thought, I must be an hour late. They're probably sitting there going, where is Swanny? Where is Swanny? So what am I excited about? The fact that we are getting out of the days where it is dark in the morning and it is dark when you get home. We are getting towards the longer days of the year. And we've got our time change coming up in March. Oh, baby. Get me back to the days where when you wake up, it's bright. When you go to bed, it's bright. I can't stand the winter with the weather. I mean, I don't mind the weather. I can't stand the winter with the what do you call that? I don't even know what you call that. It's not weather. What is that? With the daytime? The clock? I don't even know what I'm arguing about. The time? I guess it's the time. I don't like the time. The time change in the winter is what I hate. I don't like it's dark in the morning, it's dark at night. I like it where if you wake up at 6 o'clock, man, it is bright. And I like when you're laying in bed at 8:30 at night and there's still some sunlight. Not that I lay in bed at 8:30 at night or anything. I mean, I am 45. You know what my sister said? Final thing here. I am the youngest by 12 and 10 years. My sisters are, decade and a little bit more than a decade older than me. And my youngest sister, who's 10 years, or no, my oldest sister said this to me. She said, Lawton, tomorrow you'll be closer to 50 than you are to 40. Thank you, Garnett. Thank you. So I am now, yes, closer to 50 than I am to 40. A couple of days into that. Appreciate it. It's bad enough turning 45, let alone finding out when I'm 45 and a day old, I'm closer to 50 than 40. All right, we got one more segment here for you today. We'll hit a quick break. We'll come back. Stay with us for more of the show that shakes the Southland.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Thursday. What a great Thursday it was to talk with legendary Clemson SID Tim Beret and opening the show with former Clemson Tiger basketball player and current IPTE of Major Gifts and the Block C Club representative assistant director of that, Jordan Roper. And tonight in Little John Coliseum at 8 o'clock, Trevor Booker will be honored, and rightfully so. And Tim said earlier when we were talking with him about it that, previously you had to be in the ring of honor to get into the rafters or have your jersey retired in basketball. But, I think that's I think that was just too much, too stiff. You got to open it up a little bit. You got to have guys in there that maybe aren't the ring of honor type. And that's okay. Because nobody let me just lay it out there in all honesty. Nobody cares about who's in the Ring of Honor. Like when you go into Little John Coliseum, if there's 4 people in that stadium for the next 100 years, that's garbage. The Ring of Honor doesn't mean diddly. But you start putting banners up in that arena, you start to bolster what the team is and what the program can be, and you can still keep those people who are in the Ring of Honor and honor them rightfully so, but you expand the reach of what the program can be to more people. Like, why would I go? Like, if you think about it, honestly, if you were like, I have made the argument about why Zion Williamson should have gone to Clemson over Duke 100 times on this program. And it was simple. He'd never be forgotten at Clemson. 10 years from now, people would go, what was that kid's name with the, that busted his shoe up? I mean, he'll just vanish amongst the stars at Duke quickly. But one thing that he knew going to Duke that you can't necessarily say for Clemson is that there's a chance that he was going to be in the rafters at Duke. And, at Clemson, that's just not the case. To get in the rafters, it would take a Christmas miracle. And the truth is, at Clemson, every great basketball player in the history of the program should be in the rafters. Why? Not because of how their numbers compare to their contemporaries at Duke and North Carolina, but how their numbers compare given the fact that it's a program that doesn't have a whole lot of history and tradition. I mean, that's the thing. And how do you create history and tradition? Well, you can try to manufacture some and hope that what that does is carry over to new players. It's a fake it till you make it type deal. And I'm not telling you that the guys who are getting put into the upper arena and the ladies that are getting put into the upper arena at Little John don't deserve it. But it comes down to, hey, if we want to eventually have names that are not just generational at Clemson, but generational in the sports history, like a Christian Laettner and others, the way you get there is by honoring those that came before. And so that when that kid, that future Christian Laettner, or that future Grant Hill, or that future Jerry Stackhouse, or Vince Carter, or Rasheed Wallace, or whoever walks into Little John Coliseum, he sees banners hanging in the arena. Now, those banners may not have gone on to be the biggest names in the NBA or had the biggest careers in the history of the sport, like Michael Jordan, but they are banners nonetheless that a kid can aspire to have. And when you don't have any, when you don't set it out there and say, this is achievable for you, when a kid looks at those banners and thinks, man, I'll never get there. There's not enough banners up there to make me feel like it's possible. And then they roll up to Chapel Hill or they go to Durham and they go, oh, maybe I can. Maybe I can. And that, for me, when we talk about Clemson basketball and what Jordan Roper's helped spearhead, it's the maybe I can. Maybe they can get enough players that you're putting them up there on a regular basis because they are legit stars. Not just collegiately, but maybe guys that go into big careers in the NBA. And tonight it'll be a guy, most notably the most recent NBA success out of Tiger Town. Trevor Booker. From the big city of what? Whitmire, South Carolina? Yes, indeed. Trevor Booker. And kudos to Trevor for not only going on to have a great career in the NBA, but financially working with Jonah Bays. And I know he wants to have a long and lustrous professional career outside of basketball in the business world. So Big Trev, look, you're not Big Trev the Giant Killer, but at one point you were Big Trev the Blue Devil Killer, and the Blue Devils are in the house tonight. So maybe Clemson will play up to his standard against Coach K in his final visit to Little John Coliseum. But in all honesty, Trevor, listen, I know you got aspirations to be a billionaire. I just want to be 100-aire. If you got a business, Big Trevor, and you want to back the show that shakes the Southland, let's connect. Hit me up. We got to get out of here. Again, the Tigers and the Blue Devils tonight, 8 o'clock, Little John Coliseum. Until tomorrow, as always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers!